In this video, I'd like to talk a little bit about the toolbar that you'll see along the top of most of the screens within UA. In an earlier video, we discussed how a lot of the screens are very similar throughout UA. There are many hundreds, if not thousands, of screens where information is entered or managed. Customers, purchase orders, bills of materials, manufacturing orders. In this case, we're looking at invoices. So what I want to emphasize is that the toolbar that we'll be discussing here is applicable to every screen within UA. I'm going to focus on invoices because I had to pick one, but please keep in mind that these features are available everywhere. So if I say that there's an attachments architecture for invoices, the same is true about a bill of materials in a manufacturing module, for example. So you'll notice that while I'm on a particular record, in this case I'm on a particular invoice, obviously I can move between the invoices with my navigation buttons in the bottom here. I'm looking at a particular invoice, invoice number 1 in this little sample company. So sometimes these toolbar items are specific to the current record that I'm looking at, and sometimes they're specific to the entire filter. So maybe I want to have a filter and print all those records at once. Let's take a look. Obviously I can go back to the main menu, close the screen, or get help. Those are pretty self-evident what those do. In this case, because this is an invoice, I can go investigate the line items a little deeper. In this case, I've got 4 line items for this particular invoice down below. This button appears dynamically because this is an invoice. Obviously, it wouldn't appear on a customer or vendor screen. New, save, delete. Pretty obvious what those guys do. Refreshing the screen, there's a spell checker, so maybe I want to check the spellings of my line items in the description here to make sure they don't have any typos before my customers see it. So those types of good things that will appear. You'll notice that when I moved into the bottom section that my toolbar changed, and now I can adjust the fonts and colors and font sizes, and that when I click back into the header, I get a different toolbar. So there are several different toolbars depending on where the focus is within the screen. I can obviously do a search. The search engine allows me to find information in a very detailed way. You can see here that I'm looking for a specific invoice, and there's just a laundry list of ways I can find invoices. Who sold it, which sales group, which region, which state the customer was in, any number of questions. And in fact, there's ways to add quite a bit more to this list. There's also a way to remove items from the list so that for things you don't use, you're not scrolling through endless amounts of information. But the concept of the search engine is to apply conditions, create a filter for the invoices you'd like to see. There may be several million invoices in your system, but you may say, I only want to find the invoices that were sold or that were invoiced through a certain date range that a particular salesperson did for a particular sales region, and maybe over a dollar amount that are still more than 30 days overdue. I can create those kind of criteria using the search engine. And of course, when I applied that, I would only get a subset of the records within my database. Once I have defined a criteria, I may want to save that. Perhaps, if it's something that I repetitively do, I can create that. This may be, overdue invoices for Charles. Maybe Charles is one of our salesmen. And again, I'll apologize for any typos I have here. So I would create that, and that would give it a friendly name. What that's done is only stored the definition of what I want to see. That would later appear in my saved filter. So as I save those, I start to get a list of items, and then I simply would double click it to reapply that. Keep in mind that when I create a filter, it's only storing the definition of what I want. If I later add additional records that should be included in that filter, they would automatically be picked up the next time I apply that filter. So we're not creating a snapshot of the data at a moment in time. We're storing a definition and then applying that at any point in time to the records that currently meet that condition. Obviously I can print, export to Excel, lots of good things here. I can export to PDF, Word docs, Excel spreadsheets, any of the major formats I can use. I can print and or export from that particular capability. There's unlimited notes, so for every invoice I can have unlimited notes for that. Again, keeping in mind that this same capability is true in every screen. If this were for customers, I might want to have an ongoing list of notes, maybe times that we call them some sort of call log. I can also have unlimited attachments. An attachment could be any binary file that exists somewhere in the system, or I could actually have those stored in my data repository. There's an option you set up during the configuration. So typical examples, if I'm looking at an employee, I may want to have a scan of his or her passport and have that immediately accessible. If this were a bill of materials, perhaps I'd like to have a wiring diagram or a schematic or some type of warranty information that might be in a PDF from the manufacturer that I want to have readily available while I'm looking at that bill of materials. For an invoice, I might want to have a photostatic scan of the PO that justifies us sending them this invoice. And again, I could print those together and collate them and have those stapled together or in the same envelopes that the customer knows that we are sending an invoice, and here's the purchase order that stands in proof of that. So that's a good architecture. And again, keep in mind, it applies to every screen within the system. There's a scheduler. The scheduler allows me to create recurring steps, recurring schedules to somehow come back to this record. If this were a customer, I may want to set up a call every 6 months to just to check in on them, see how they're doing, if they're still satisfied with our services, those types of things. And when I do that scheduler, it would typically appear in the bottom right down here whenever that time is due. I could also have it send myself invoices, lots of things, lots of different ways a scheduler could be used. There could be unlimited contacts. So if I'm looking at a particular customer, I might have 100 contacts within that customer that we deal with, have their phone numbers, their extensions, their cell phones, that type of information. For an invoice, it may be a list of the people who approve it or any number of things. So again, these are generic features that apply to all screens. Unlimited user fields. The invoices that we have lots of fields, the terms, bill to, ship to, those types of things. If there are things we need beyond what the base UA system can do, I could simply go into user fields and add as many as I want, and then say things like, are they required, those types of properties that I can establish, and then enter those and have them stored and or printed on the invoices. The one thing I'll show you here, which I think is a neat feature, is the ability to analyze the information. So keep in mind that the first step, I may have created a filter. Show me all of the invoices in a particular sales region, a segment of perhaps a country that we've set up for a particular salesperson, and then I want to analyze that information maybe over a time period or by dollar amount. So what the system allows me to do is create these ad hoc graphs and pivot tables on the fly based on the changing definition of what I need from a day-to-day basis. So what I'll do is I'll go to pivot chart. Now bear in mind we had just created a filter on these invoices, so we've already determined that of the millions we may have in our system, we're only concerned about the ones that meet this condition. And to kind of quickly show you how easy it is to put together a quick chart or graph that meets that condition, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the customer name, and this is a list of the properties I have from the screen I just came from. I'm going to drag that customer field over and drop it into the category here. And again, this is a very simple example. I've only got a handful of customers, but you get the concept. And then I'm going to say I want to take the document amount and drop it into this section where the data is displayed. So just like that, I've quickly created a graph showing me that Fans Unlimited is far and away our most successful customer engagement. While I'm doing that, there's quite a bit of capability here. I can obviously change the chart type. I can go to a three-dimensional chart. I can switch that over to a columnar chart, different styles here. I can look at line graphs and look at analysis that way, pie graphs. So there's just an endless amount of ways you can play with this, so to speak, and get different types of information. I could do analysis, deviations, averages, any type of statistical information that I want. So there's quite a bit of capabilities here that I won't go into great depth about, but suffice it to say that using the search engine from the previous screen, again, identifying I want this collection of invoices that meet these conditions, applying that, getting a subset of all of my invoices in the system, and then I want to do something. I want to analyze that information maybe over a geographical region, or just, again, in this case, who's our best customer. I can do that very easily using the graphing capability. So with just a little bit of effort, the average person with just a little bit of skills, a few clicks of the mouse, you can do some very fantastic things with the information stored in UA Business software.